That's what they called PX-13. A planet so hostile that even the most advanced species in the galaxy had written it off as a lost cause. The air was poison. The gravity was twice what any organic species could tolerate. The land itself shifted like a living thing, consuming anything that remained still for too long. The predators didn't just hunt, you were already dead the moment they sensed you. No one survived PX-13. That was the whole point. The Galactic Accord had used it for centuries as a test. They dressed it up as a rite of passage, a way to prove that a species was worthy of joining their ranks. But it was never about survival. It was about control. Every species that reached the threshold of interstellar expansion was sent here. Not one had ever returned. The Accord ensured it stayed that way. Humanity wasn't supposed to be different. They dropped us in without warning. No advanced technology, no weapons beyond the most primitive tools. Just fire, steel, and our own instincts. The galaxy watched, amused, waiting for the inevitable. 3 days in, the first transmission came through. A distorted signal, half buried in static, but the message was unmistakable. Still here. That should have been impossible. By the third week, the transmissions became clearer. Figured out the air. It's not poison, just inefficient. Fixed that. The scientists of the Accord scrambled to analyze the data. The humans should have suffocated within hours, yet somehow, they had adapted. Their bodies weren't just resisting the atmosphere, they were thriving in it. Then came another transmission. Hunting's good. Dangerous, but we like the challenge. The feed was grainy, but the image was unmistakable, a human, covered in blood and dirt, standing over the corpse of a predator that had wiped out entire expeditions before. It was nearly 3 times his size. He looked into the camera and grinned. This was wrong. By the 4th month, the unthinkable happened. A new message. Built a settlement. Defense systems in place. Farming underway. That wasn't survival. That was conquest. Panic rippled through the Accord. PX-13 wasn't just a test, it was a graveyard. It was supposed to break them. But the humans weren't breaking. They were thriving. The Accord convened an emergency session. They should be dead. How did they do this? No species has ever lasted this long. Every possible scenario had been accounted for. Every variable controlled. The humans had no technology, no infrastructure, no external resources. And yet, we need to shut it down. But it was too late. The next transmission was longer, clearer. The humans weren't just surviving. They had mapped the entire planet. They understood it now, the ecosystem, the predators, the resources. They weren't fighting against PX-13 anymore. They had tamed it. By month 6, they were making demands. Send more supplies. We need to expand. A pause. Then laughter. Or don't. We'll manage either way. That was the moment the Accord realized what had happened. The test had failed. PX-13 wasn't the tomb anymore. It was ours. Silence. The kind of silence that spreads like a slow, creeping horror. The Galactic Accord had never encountered a situation like this before. The test had never failed. There were protocols for an unsuccessful survival attempt: send a recovery team, document the remains, wipe the event from the records. But no one had ever survived PX-13 long enough to demand supplies. Worse, they had reports, fragmented, but clear. The humans weren't just surviving. They were engineering solutions, adapting their bodies and minds to a planet that was supposed to be impossible. They had broken the rules of the game, and the Accord had no idea what to do next. A transmission was sent down. It was carefully worded, measured, as if speaking to something unstable. You have proven your resilience. You will be retrieved. The test is over. For the first time in the history of the experiment, a species had earned an invitation to the Galactic Accord not because they had survived, but because the Accord could not afford to leave them there any longer. The humans responded immediately. Retrieve us? There was a pause. A strange, deliberate silence. No. The galaxy froze. We're not coming back. We like it here. The council chambers erupted into chaos. Species that had ruled for millennia, intellects that had engineered entire civilizations, could not comprehend what they had just heard. PX-13 had never been a home. It was a nightmare. A planet designed to break minds and bodies. And the humans were choosing to stay? Another transmission followed, clearer this time. A live feed. A human settlement, unlike anything seen before, stretched across the landscape. Fortifications carved from living stone. Fires burning in carefully constructed pits. Domesticated predators prowling at the edges, their glowing eyes scanning for threats but not at the humans. They were hunting for them. Then the camera turned. The man speaking was the same one from before, the bloodied survivor who had killed the first predator. He was stronger now, leaner. His skin was marked with scars, not as wounds, but as trophies. His voice was calm. Steady. This place tried to kill us. He lifted his hand. A massive, reptilian skull rested beside him, the head of a beast so large it could swallow a man whole. We killed it back. The air in the council chamber grew thick. The representatives of 100 worlds, creatures with lifespans spanning centuries, felt something they had never felt before. Fear. PX-13 isn't the tomb anymore. It's a proving ground. It's ours. The feed cut out. Panic rippled through the Accord. There were too many unknowns. The humans had done something that had never been done before, they had changed the nature of the test. There was only one solution. A quiet one. A permanent one. They mobilized the Purge fleet. 100 warships, armed with planet-shattering weapons, capable of reducing entire civilizations to dust. It was the only way. The experiment had to be erased. If the humans refused to leave, then PX-13 would burn. The order was given. The fleet descended. Then, everything went wrong. The first ship to break through the planet's atmosphere disappeared. The second exploded mid-flight, caught in a gravitational anomaly that should not have existed. By the time the third vessel reported ground contact, its final transmission sent a wave of horror through the command center. They're waiting for us. The feed cut to static. Across the entire planet, the humans were watching the sky. They weren't unarmed. They weren't defenseless. They had spent a year preparing for this moment. And now? Now, they were ready to fight. The Purge fleet's commanders hesitated. That was not in the protocol. No species had ever fought back after being subjected to PX-13. No species had even lasted long enough to understand what was coming next. This was supposed to be a sterilization, a cleanup effort, erase the failed experiment, rewrite the records, ensure that no one ever spoke of what had happened here. And yet, here they were. Staring down at a species that had been expecting them. The flagship Doom of Stars relayed orders. Standard orbital bombardment, precision strikes on key locations. If the humans had managed to build structures, they would be reduced to ash before the ground forces even landed. The fleet fired. The first wave of kinetic projectiles hurtled toward the surface at near-relativistic speeds. Nothing could survive an impact like that. And yet, they never landed. Anomalies flickered across the planet's upper atmosphere, unseen forces, gravitational distortions engineered by human hands. The projectiles slowed, bent, and vanished. Some were redirected, slamming back into the fleet itself, shattering hulls and rupturing warships in an instant. On the surface, a new transmission was sent, this time, from multiple locations. A dozen humans, standing in different settlements, each of them smiling. "We told you. We like it here." The fleet scrambled for a response. The commanders barked orders. "Send in the ground forces. Clear out whatever unnatural resistance has taken hold. Burn the planet to its core if necessary." Dropships descended. Thousands of soldiers, genetically engineered for combat, equipped with the best weapons the Accord had ever created, touched down on PX-13. The first squad to make landfall never reported back. The second squad sent a single message before they were silenced. "It's a trap." The feeds flickered with chaos. The forests, previously barren wastelands, were now filled with structures, underground tunnels, deadly kill zones carved from the very rock itself. The land that once shifted and devoured anything that remained still? The humans had turned it into a weapon. The ground forces didn't find helpless survivors. They found hunters. The humans didn't just resist. They went on the offensive. Primitive weapons shouldn't have worked against Accord armor. But human ingenuity had found the weak points, joint gaps, thermal vulnerabilities, sensory overload tactics. Every ambush was a precision kill. The Accord's forces weren't fighting soldiers. They weren't fighting an army. They were fighting a civilization of survivors who had already beaten the most lethal environment in the galaxy. The purge became a massacre, but not for the humans. It was the Accord that was being wiped out. A final emergency transmission was sent from the ground forces commander. His voice was shaking. "We have made a mistake. PX-13, it belongs to them now." Static. The fleet was in full retreat before the last of the ground forces had even been eliminated. The last transmission from the planet came moments later, as the surviving Accord ships fled back into deep space. The same human commander from before. The same calm, confident tone. "The test is over. We passed." A pause. "You failed." Silence. Then, one final message, broadcast across every Accord channel, sent directly to their homeworld. "We're coming. See you soon." The Galactic Accord went into full lockdown. For the first time in its history, a species had broken containment. PX-13 was supposed to be a grave, not a proving ground. Humanity should have been erased, forgotten, reduced to another cautionary tale whispered between civilizations too fearful to challenge the Accord's rule. But now, they had survived. Worse, they had thrived. The surviving ships of the Purge fleet arrived at Accord-controlled space in disarray. They were damaged, battle-worn, carrying survivors who spoke in hushed, terrified voices about what they had witnessed. The official records were purged. The Council ordered a full information blackout. No one was to speak of PX-13, of the things that now lived there. It was declared an exclusion zone, an uncharted anomaly, a place that did not exist. But rumors spread. Pirate bands, rogue mercenary fleets, black market smugglers, whispers began to circulate. They spoke of a planet where the unkillable now ruled. A place where the most lethal warriors the galaxy had ever seen were preparing for something bigger. Then, the first human ship appeared. It was not an official delegation. It was not a peaceful emissary. It was a warning. The station at the edge of Accord territory picked up the distress call. "This is Outpost VecTAA to unidentified vessel. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." Silence. "Unidentified vessel, respond now or we will open fire." The signal came through. A simple, calm human voice. "Try." The station's defense systems armed, targeting the lone human vessel. But before a single shot could be fired, the station's entire grid went dark. Internal power failures. Communications scrambled. Gravity systems failing. Every single failsafe compromised in an instant. A message appeared on their emergency systems, overriding every protocol. You should have let us in. For the first time in recorded history, an Accord military station was boarded. And this time, it wasn't humans who were afraid. The First Fleet was sent to contain the situation. The Second Fleet was sent to investigate what happened to the First. The Third Fleet was smart enough to turn around and run. Humanity was no longer trapped on PX-13. They were here. And they were just getting started. The Galactic Accord fell into paralysis. For millennia, they had ruled with quiet authority. Wars had been rare, and uprisings were crushed before they could even begin. They did not negotiate with upstart species. They controlled them, ensured they stayed within their proper evolutionary limits, and if necessary, removed them before they became a threat. But now, humanity had broken containment. The first station had gone silent. The Second Fleet was gone. The few distress signals that made it back were incoherent, fragmented screams, garbled reports of ships shutting down mid-flight, of enemies that saw them before they could see back. This was not a war. This was a reckoning. The Council convened in secrecy. The highest representatives of the Accord, the minds that had guided the known galaxy for over 100,000 years, spoke in urgent, fearful tones. They should not have survived PX-13. Yet here they are. We must prepare. Prepare for what? No one had an answer. A new message was received not through traditional channels, but through every single system connected to the Accord's network. A transmission that should have been impossible, broadcast simultaneously to every ruling species, every leader, every world that had ever called itself part of the Accord. A simple phrase, appearing in every language. You wanted us to prove ourselves. We did. And then, a second message. Now it's your turn. Silence. The council chambers were still, except for the quiet hum of intelligence officers scanning for the source of the hack. They found nothing. No origin point. No trace of intrusion. The humans had simply slipped inside their most secure systems as if they had always belonged there. Then the reports came in. The humans weren't attacking major worlds. They weren't laying siege to key planets. That would have been predictable. Instead, they were picking off the Accord support systems, one by one. Deep space supply routes? Gone. Fuel depots? Sabotaged. Communication relays? Hijacked. Shadow fleets stationed in dead zones? Erased. And they did it all without being seen. The few survivors described the same terrifying realization. Humanity wasn't an invading force. They were already inside. The Council's greatest war fleets mobilized, spreading across the stars, searching for the enemy. But they found nothing. No battle lines. No open declarations of war. And yet, Accord infrastructure continued to collapse. Fleets ran out of fuel. Planetary defenses refused to respond. Entire sectors fell silent as humanity dismantled the very foundation of the Accord's power. And then, the final blow. The homeworld of the Accord, Vasteron, a planet untouched by war for 100,000 years, lost power. Not an attack. Not a battle. Just darkness. The planetary defense grid, once the most advanced in the galaxy, flickered and died. The orbital fleets that protected the ruling class drifted, their engines inert. The government halls, once filled with the voices of power, sat in absolute, suffocating silence. Then, a single vessel appeared above the capital. Not a warship. Not an armada. A single human shuttle. It touched down in the heart of the city, unchallenged. The ruling class watched in stunned silence as its doors opened, revealing a single human. Not armored. Not armed. Just walking, unafraid, through the halls of their fallen empire. He entered the council chambers, standing alone before the beings who had shaped the galaxy for millennia. They had once sent his people to die on PX-13. Now, he looked them in the eye. This is the part where you beg. The most powerful beings in the universe, the architects of untold civilizations, the self-proclaimed masters of the stars, did not speak. Because they understood, at last, what they had created. They had set humanity loose in the deadliest environment they could imagine. And humanity had learned. Now, the Accord belonged to them. And they had one simple question left to ask. Do you think you're worthy of survival? No one spoke. The Council, once the ruling force of the galaxy, sat frozen. These beings had never been questioned before. Never been challenged. For millennia, their decisions had shaped the rise and fall of entire species. Now, a single human stood before them, waiting for an answer. The silence stretched. The human tilted his head, almost amused. He had all the time in the world. You put us on PX-13, he said, slowly. A death world. A graveyard. A place where no species had ever survived. He took a step forward, and the council flinched. We didn't just survive. Another step. The vast chamber, once filled with untouchable rulers, suddenly felt very small. We made it ours. The human placed his hands on the great table that had once decided the fate of countless civilizations. He owned the room now, and everyone in it knew it. The Accord is dead. You just haven't accepted it yet. A single voice, weak, trembling, tried to push back. We are the architects of this galaxy. We have maintained order for 100,000 years. The human smiled. Not a kind smile. Not anymore. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. It came from the massive displays that lined the room, screens that had once relayed military reports, trade negotiations, and governance matters for the entire Accord. Now, they displayed something else. Footage. Of ships falling. Fleets shattered. Accord strongholds abandoned or overrun. Not by war. By collapse. We didn't need to fight you head-on, the human continued. We just had to take away the things you didn't even realize you relied on. Fuel. Communication. Infrastructure. Supply chains. All gone. We learned that lesson on PX-13. Adapt, or die. The Council's greatest leaders, beings who had once ruled through absolute authority, looked at each other in desperation. For the first time, they weren't in control. They were pleading. What do you want? The human leaned back, considering them. That's the real question, isn't it? For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, another chime. A new transmission appeared. It was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every world under Accord rule. Every remaining fleet. Every surviving station. A simple message. The Accord has fallen. The chamber erupted. The council members shouted, some in fury, some in fear. You can't just declare that. This is an act of war. You don't understand what you're doing. The human chuckled. No, I understand perfectly. He turned, walking toward the chamber doors, unconcerned. The security forces stationed outside did not move. They were already under human control. He paused at the threshold, looking back one last time. The galaxy belongs to those who can survive it. A final transmission, one last message before he disappeared into the corridors of the broken empire. We did. And with that, he was gone. The council sat in stunned silence, watching the screens, watching the collapse of the only world order they had ever known. They had sent humanity to die. Instead, they had created their replacements.